Hey folks, welcome to another review with yours truly, Sam Healey. Today we're taking a look at this little guy right here, Siege Storm. This is a two-player card game that's put out by Awaken Realms, the same people who brought you Lords of Hellas. So this is a little bit of a lighter fare for them, but it is a two-player card game where you're basically trying to whittle your player's resource deck or draw pile down to nothing, because when they have to draw cards from it and they can't, they have lost the game and you have won. So let's get down to the table. I'll show you how it works, and then we'll come back later for some final thoughts. So here I have set up for you a game of Siege Storm. This entire place here is called the Battleground, and it is comprised of two sets of places, I guess you could say. So these are the respective resources piles, these are the respective war tracks, and then you also have a support zone, which is over here and over here for the opponent, and then a casualty pile, which will be here and here, respectively. Each player starts with a hand of 4 cards, and then the rest of their deck is split up evenly into 3 piles of 10 cards each, which makes up 2 things. It makes up your draw pile, and then it also makes up your health. Now, in a very general fashion, it's very simple how you play the game. It's played in a number of phases where each player goes through all of the 5 phases that are there, and then the other person gets to take their 5 phases, and so forth and so on. There are a basic type of card anatomy that is here. You have this is the cost that this card needs to either be played for its action or put into a deployment zone and be able to go to war against the opponent. The action that you will get if you pay this and then just discard it to your casualty pile is here. A passive ability will also be in effect if it is in your war track, no man's land, or front line. So that usually has some type of cost attributed to it. This one here means that you have to spend 1 in order to get this effect, moving an ally to an empty slot on your track somewhere. And then down at the bottom, you have an attack value and a defense value, which will come into effect if you are attacking or defending a resource pile. So the first thing you do is you prepare. If you have any units over here in your support zone, then you would basically write them to show that they are available for use in this turn. The next thing is you would draw 2 cards from the top of your deck, and you must always draw 2 cards. You can't choose to draw 1 or 0, and you add them to your hand. The next thing you're able to do is track movement. So from a previous turn, if you have units in your deployment area or further above your track, you simply move them up 1 space. So there's a deployment zone, and then 1 more, and then 1 more here in your war track. After that, then you can deploy. And deploying is where you're going to be playing something down as a creature right here, and you're going to be having them move forward. You can also, at any point during your turn or your opponent's turn, play a card by paying this and doing that action. But during the deployment phase, you're basically going to be looking, and you're going to have to, especially in the first turn, because you don't start with any support down here, you're going to have to discard cards from your hand equal to the number that's up here. Now, support cards down here will basically subtract 1 for each one used from these different support costs. So, for example, I could play the Scout, not having to discard any of these cards in my hand, and simply place them down here, or I could, for no cost, also draw 2. It's up to you, whatever you'd like to do. But during my deployment phase, I am going to go ahead and place that in my deployment area, and then the 5th phase is going to be ending my turn, so I will do that, and it becomes my opponent's turn. So my opponent prepares, nothing to prepare over here, draws 2, and adds 2 cards to their starting hand. All right, so we have a number of different things here. We have demons, we have fire dragons, we have banshees, we have fire elementals, warlocks, fire elementals. So there's a lot of different things here. And as you can see earlier on, the lower deployment costs are, of course, better. So the next thing you do would be track movement. He has nothing to move. Does he have any of these that he wants to play as an action? Deal 2 damage. Yeah, we're going to do that. We're going to put that over here in our discard in our casualty pile. And that just deals 2 damage. So these come over here into my damage pile, like so. So that was useful. Oh, look, there's another one. Let's go ahead and do that as well. I'm going to deal 2 more damage. So that's 2 damage here. And now, do we want to deploy anything? That's got 3 attack. We'll go ahead and deploy that there by discarding 1 card. This guy's really expensive. We're probably not going to get much use out of him, so we're just going to discard him as that. We'll go ahead and turn this face down as a discard pile as well. And that's the end of their turn. Now, we fast forwarded a little bit here because I wanted to show you one more aspect of the game that you need to kind of understand to get the general flow of how the game works. And that is, once you have a unit that is up here and during the track movement, so at the beginning of my turn, I'm going to look at my hand and I'm going to prepare. I still don't have any committed units down here for support, so that doesn't happen anything. I do draw 2 more cards to add to my hand here. But now I'm going to track movement. So now this scout is going to come off of my war track like this, and now I need to determine what that scout is going to do. She's either going to storm, which means she's going to try to attack your opponent's resource pile and go against this defender, or she can hold ground, which means that she can go to either the front line or the no man's land, whichever you choose, at which case her passive effect would stay in effect while she's here. Or she can support, which simply means her card would come over here, be flipped over, and now she's a support card. She will be used to provide a -1 discount for any of my cards that I want to deploy in the future turns. So in this particular case, because of the passive ability that's here, whenever I deploy someone, that card, we get to deal 1 damage. We're going to go ahead and place her in the no man's land here and allow her to continue doing that passive attack. So now when I want to come back here and I want to, if I want to deploy something, I may not. So let's go ahead and, we're going to put the healing golem right here because he's got a really high defense value, and that might do some good later on. He also has a passive ability. After the card storms, it goes back to the top of your resource. So normally, if a card chooses to storm and do attack damage over here, it would go to your casualties pile. But since his passive ability is in effect, it would go back to the top of my resources. So I'll get him back here pretty quick. So that's another cool thing. But he's going to be deployed. I need to spend $2 for that. I'm going to spend these 2 right here. And he has been deployed. Her passive effect is still in effect, so 1 more damage is dealt. And that will be the end of my turn. So then my opponent is going to track as well. This is going to come up like this. We're getting a little bit out of order. Let's go ahead and draw these cards. There were no support cards down here to write. So now we have a Master of Elements, an Imp, and a Demon. But we have to determine, first of all now, with tracking movement, we have to determine, are we going to attack? But we're not going to storm here. First of all, let me explain why. Whenever you storm, you take your attacker's ability and you go against the defender's, the deployment zone, the defender, which is a 5. So a 3 versus a 5, no damage is actually going to be dealt. So we're not going to storm with this card. If I didn't have something here, storming would be a little bit more of a viable option. But since that high defender there, nothing good will come of it. So we're just going to, her passive ability isn't that great because it's kind of expensive. So we're going to put her down here as a support card to be used on a later thing. Now, here's the cool thing about putting something in effect. You can use it immediately as a support card. So with this one here, cards I deploy cost 1 less. I can deploy this demon right here, and that's -1. So I only have to pay 1 to get that down. I don't actually have to use any of the cards for my hand. So that's a pretty cool thing as well. So that's about it for understanding the basic flow of your turns and how the game is played. There is a lot of different things that you can do to the game. There's a couple of variations for rules, and there's a lot of deck building that can go into it, because the cards that I'm using here are just part of the starting hand or starting decks that come in the package. These are all cards that you can add to and really customize your decks to your own personal playing style. So there is that level to also take into effect. But that's generally speaking how you play Siege Storm. So that's about it for Siege Storm. It is not a difficult game to play at all. It's very simple, as a matter of fact. Some of the rules in the rulebook were a little bit muddy to wade through, but overall it was not difficult to learn how to play, or play for that matter. There is some depth to it, but let's go ahead and get to some pros and cons for you. My first pro of the game is that the artwork is very good. It's very well done. It is not, doesn't look like they skimped very much on this one at all. There's a lot of imagery in it. Some of it is kind of tropesy, with the good guys being angels and the bad guys being demons. So there is that, which is probably a little bit hit or miss. But at the same time, the artwork is done very well. So there is that aesthetic draw to the game that games that good artwork have usually kind of try to build upon. And they did well. My second pro is the fact that a lot of these cards really work together. The starting decks seem kind of samey, but that's to be expected. I like the fact that you have the ability to kind of customize your deck, and it's not to the point, at least right now. I don't know what they're planning on doing in the future for this, if it sells well, but right now there isn't this overabundance of cards that you have to pull from to customize your deck. Sometimes, at least for me, these kinds of games tend to start feeling like you're drinking from the fire hose, because there's so many different card combinations out there that it's really kind of difficult to whittle them down to what you want to do. But again, I understand that could be just me and my kind of not really caring that much about that aspect of mini games that choose to do that. But with this one, it feels palatable still. It feels like a nice 3-course meal, and not, drinking or eating a smorgasbord of different things. So there is that. My third pro is that it does play very quickly. It's not one that overstays its welcome sometimes and becomes over convoluted with a lot of different things. Rulebook does give you some pointers on how to play either side of the conflict, so you can kind of from the very beginning have a good idea of what you should be trying to accomplish with the side that you're playing. So I like that gameplay is quick. I like that gameplay has some thought patterns to it, but it's not a brain-burning activity either. So it's very light, very easy, very simple to understand and to explain. Now, with all of that having been said, there are some cons for me. And the first one is that it's another 2-player card game where you can build your decks out of those cards. And I know that was a pro because right now it's light and it's easy and it's manageable for me. But I can see in the future that if they keep trying to support this game, it's just going to get bloated and convoluted. And I know that's my opinion. Don't get me wrong. But at the same time, I just don't like those kinds of games. And this one is still on the lighter fare. So I don't really mind that much. There isn't, like I said earlier, this overabundance of things to pull from. And so the number of combinations that you can tweak and kind of cheese are limited. This is a con for me because I can see where this game would be wanting to go down that track. We already have enough of those. We don't need any more, I don't think, unless you're offering something new. And while this did feel slightly new with the war tracks and all of that kind of stuff, I don't think there's enough new there. Another con for the game is has to do with the artwork. Earlier I said that the artwork is good, and I do want to highlight that because I think good artwork is necessary, in my opinion, for enjoying a game. It just helps immerse you into that just a little bit further. But, you know, you have these scantily clad women going into battle. That's not practical. I mean, if you look at the dudes that are in this, they are fully clad with armor. That's not cool. So while the artwork is well done, I gotta mention that this has got to stop at some point, right? So I guess all in all, what I'm trying to say here is that it's really kind of middle of the road for me. I did enjoy my experiences with it. It's not that it is a bad game. I just don't know how much more I'm going to enjoy it in the future. So I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10. And the reason I'm giving it a 5 out of 10 is because it is kind of just middle of the road. It's an average game. It's not bad. But I think there are a lot of games out there that do exactly what this does in a slightly different way. Not to say that they're doing it in a better way, but because, you know, I don't really have an inclination to play those games either. So I guess that's that. 5 out of 10 for me, middle of the road average, not bad, but not, you know, brain exploding either. So thanks for joining me. I hope you've at least learned how to play the game, and that'll give you the ability to go out there and play it and try it for yourself. I always say that, try before you buy, folks. But that's it from me. 5 out of 10 for Siege Storm. We'll see you guys on the flip side.